I am Dr. Terence Drew, Prime Minister St. Kitts and Nevis, present chair of the OECS Authority. Today, we culminate the meeting, the 74th meeting of the OECS Authority here in beautiful St. Kitts and Nevis at the Marriott Resort. The meetings were held the 14th and the 15th of February 2014. Now, in attendance to this meeting were the Honorable Easton Farrell, Premier Montserrat, the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, Prime Minister of Grenada, myself, Honorable Natalio Wheatley, Premier of the British Virgin Islands, Honorable Dr. Ellis Webster, Premier of Anguilla, and Honorable Serge Lichimi, President, Executive Council of the Territory of the Territorial Authority of Martinique. Of course, we had other heads who were not able to attend, but they did send their representatives at this meeting, namely the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, the Honorable Philip Japere, the Honorable Airy, and the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez. Heads of delegation in attendance were Honorable Irvin McIntyre, Minister of Finance, Dominica, Honorable Wayne Girard, Minister of Finance, St. Lucia, and the OECS commissioners in attendance, our very own from St. Kitts and Nevis, Mr. Larry Vaughan, but others who were here were, of course, our Director General, Dr. Didigus Jules, who is on my right, His Excellency Colin Murdoch, Excellency Elmer Isaac, Excellency Alan Alexander, Mr. Benito Wheatley, and Mr. Jean Lacassade of Martinique, as mentioned before. OECS institutions, as I've mentioned before, Director General of ECCAA, Mr. Anthony Whittier, and others in attendance. So that is by way of pointing out who are in attendance here with us at this meeting. A number of critical things were mentioned and discussed at this meeting. For those who are not fully aware, the OECS does make decisions that affect the lives of our people here in the OECS. Some of them that I'll go into and ask the Director General to also delve into some of them. But this afternoon, as you can see at the head table, apart from the Director General, I have with me President of Martinique, Lichimi, and he will also make a statement, and I will read a statement with respect to this meeting's position as to Martinique as a member of this organization. And so I'll now turn it over to the Director General.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to begin by expressing our deep and profound appreciation to the government and people of St. Kitts, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, for their extraordinary hospitality during these last 2 days. The meeting has been a highly productive meeting, and we went through it. It's a regular business meeting of the authority, except that there were some extraordinary matters discussed. Aside from receiving reports on the progress of work at the OECS Commission in relation to our strategic plan and progress on the expenditures on our budget, the other matters focus on the Centers of Excellence idea, one of which is a key priority for our chairman. He announced efforts being made to establish a renal transplant facility here in St. Kitts and Nevis that would be available to citizens of the OECS. And we also use the opportunity for the exchange of information among heads and an agreement of a more structured approach to centers of excellence, not only in health, but in other disciplines that could be beneficial to the population of the OECS. Regional reports were received from the Commission on different key aspects of regional integration. We looked also at efforts being made and initiatives in the in respect of the environment, climate change, environmental issues. And we also looked at the question of, so we spent some time discussing the issue of the membership of associate members in the OECS and how their membership could be more meaningful and engaging to them, as well as to the broader cause of regional integration. So that in essence was the subject matter of the meeting, and we turn back to you, Chair.
All right. Thank you very much, Director, who would have give a broad outline of what the meeting accomplished and the matters that we would have dealt with. I will now give the opportunity to President Lechime. He speaks French, and so his translator will be heard. Over to you, President.
Thank you a lot. I don't speak a good English.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you a lot. I don't speak a good English to speak définitively. Je parle en français.
So I'll speak French, yes.
Nous avons eu une réunion de la haute autorité remarquable.
We've had an exceptional meeting of the authority.
C'est très important de le dire. La qualité du travail de l'OECO,
It's important to know the quality of the work conducted by OECS.
ces processus
It's
hyper
processes
démocratiques
that
de
are very
décision
democratic in terms of decision making
et la qualité des thèmes qui sont
and
abordés.
the quality of the topics that are tackled in its midst.
Je pense honnêtement que la Martinique a eu raison
I honestly think that Martinique was right
de sortir de son cadre traditionnel et
to
classique
get out of its comfort zone, its traditional comfort zone,
et d'adhérer à l'OECO en 2015.
and to seek accession to the OECS in 2015.
L'île sœur de la Guadeloupe a aussi adhéré à l'OECO dans la foulée.
Our sister island of Guadeloupe also accessed the OECS in the aftermath.
Ces deux pays amènent dans cette organisation 800 000 personnes.
Both territories contribute a population of 800,000 people
La même histoire,
with the same history,
la même géographie
the same geography,
et la même ambition de contribuer et participer au monde,
and the same ambition to contribute and participate in the world, in the global stage,
sans complexe
with no complex
et sans esprit d'infériorité.
and no sense of inferiority.
Au-delà de notre statut, de notre position,
Beyond our status and our position,
Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Directeur général, je réaffirme la volonté de la Martinique d'être au cœur de l'organisation et du développement de l'OECS.
I want to reassert, DG Chair and all, Martinique's commitment and determination to be a full-fledged and effective member of the OECS.
Notre détermination est claire comme membre associé,
Our
respectueux
determination
de
is
l'organisation.
Clear
de
as an
l'OECS.
associate member that is respectful of the framework of the OECS.
Mais pour être très efficace
But to be very efficient
et pleinement intégré,
and fully integrated,
nous avons besoin d'être performants à l'intérieur de l'organisation sous plusieurs domaines.
we need to increase our efficiency within the organization on several aspects.
La connectivité aérienne,
Air connectedness,
la connectivité maritime,
maritime connectedness,
l'intelligence artificielle,
artificial intelligence,
l'énergie, toutes les formes d'énergie.
all types of energies.
Notre capacité aussi à tenir compte de notre position géostratégique entre les Amériques et l'Europe.
We must take into account our geostrategic position between the Americas and Europe,
Et surtout des échanges sur le plan commercial et économique capables de créer de la valeur ajoutée locale.
and especially with increased exchanges in terms of trade and economic interactions that will add value to our region.
C'est dans ce cadre-là, Monsieur le Président, que je vous remercie d'avoir posé le problème des membres associés non indépendants.
Hence, I wish to thank you, Chair, for bringing up the issue of associate members that are non-sovereign states and members of the OECS.
Nous respectons la trajectoire historique et politique de chacun. Ce sont les choix des peuples.
We are respectful of every single trajectory and choice made by the people of these territories.
Concernant la Martinique, nous sommes à la fois dans la République, dans l'Europe, mais aussi dans la Caraïbe.
As for Martinique, we belong at the same time to the French Republic, to the European Union, and to the Caribbean region.
Et pour travailler dans l'efficacité, il y a des leviers qu'il faut détenir
And to be efficient in our actions, there are a number of levers that we need to hold
pour échanger sur le plan commercial,
to exchange in terms of
pour
trade,
aboutir sur des recherches innovantes,
reach ways of making innovative research,
pour construire une programmation de logistique globale, y compris maritime,
to reach a global programming of logistics at a global level, including on the maritime trade routes.
La Martinique a besoin, dans les négociations qu'elle mène avec la France, la Martinique a besoin, dans le cadre des négociations qu'elle mène avec la France,
Martinique requires, as part of the negotiations that it is conducting with France,
de plus de leviers d'action,
further levers of action,
c'est-à-dire de plus d'autonomie.
meaning more autonomy.
C'est dans ce cadre-là que je veux vous remercier, Monsieur le Président, d'avoir accepté de nous soutenir,
Which is
ainsi
why
que
I want
l'ensemble
to
des collègues,
thank you, Mr. Chair, for your support, and to all of the colleagues here
dans la négociation que nous avons commencée avec la République, avec le Président de la République,
as we enter negotiations with the President of the French Republic,
sans sortir de l'Union européenne, sans sortir de la République,
without abandoning the European Union or the French Republic,
bénéficier de pouvoirs normatifs autonomes,
benefiting or enjoying autonomous normative powers,
c'est-à-dire la possibilité de faire des lois et des règlements sur place dans le pays,
means that we can pass legislative and regulatory frameworks locally,
et qui nous permettrait d'être extrêmement performants au sein de l'OECO,
so as to be extremely efficient within the OECS
et de relever les défis qui se présentent à nous sur les sujets que j'ai indiqués tout à l'heure.
and to address the challenges that we are facing in the various areas of focus that I mentioned earlier.
Je suis très honoré que cette déclaration se fasse ici, à Saint-Kitts,
I am very
Saint-Eustache,
honored that this statement is taking place here in St. Kitts.
qui a été le point de départ en 1635
That was the departing point of, in 1635,
de quelques flibustiers
of a crew of a few filibusters
qui ont d'abord occupé
That-
Saint-Christophe
first settled in St. Christopher
pour étaler la colonisation et prendre la Martinique dans la foulée.
before going to Martinique and starting French colonization there
De cette
right
histoire
away.
incroyable que nous avons connue
From
il y a
that
plusieurs siècles
extraordinary history that was born a few centuries
et qui
ago
a perduré pendant 350 ans,
and that went on for another
vous me
350
donnez
years.
l'occasion de reconstruire de l'espérance.
This here is the opportunity for us to start building hope again.
Nous, Martiniquais, nous sommes dans la République française et dans l'Europe,
The Martinique people belongs to the French Republic and to the European Union,
mais nous sommes avant tout des Caribéens, des Martiniquais.
but we are first and foremost Martinican people and Caribbean people.
Merci de tout cœur.
Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, President. I think we all understand the position of the president as he presented it in his own language that was translated. I will now take this opportunity to read a statement by the authority with respect to the position of Martinique. And I read, Martinique reiterates its commitment to the OECS regional integration effort to collectively address the major challenges confronting us of sustainable long-term development in a context of increasing globalization. Martinique shares the same history and geography as the sister countries of the OECS, with their diverse cultural processes and multiple institutional frameworks. The effectiveness of Martinique's engagement within the OECS requires an evolution of its capacities for action in terms of trade, connectivity, resilience to climate change, and energy policy in particular. This evolution is consistent with the European Union's policy on strengthening of autonomous normative power. Today, Martinique is negotiating with the French Republic for autonomous adaptation and legislation within the framework of differentiation policies, which could open the way for regional diplomacy that is useful and necessary to its future while remaining part of the French Republic and the European Union. Martinique wishes to be an effective player for its population and the OECS through its dual membership of the OECS and the European Union. The OECS welcomes this clear commitment by Martinique as expressed by President Lechime and fully supports the establishment of autonomous normative power, giving it the possibility of adapting and enacting legislative and regulatory frameworks in negotiated areas of competence. This move towards autonomy and integration is vital for the future of Martinique and the region. Thank you. End of statement. I therefore take this opportunity to extend now to the press to ask questions on the matters that have been presented thus far. So I open it up to the press.
Mervan Thompson, ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation from St. Kitts and Nevis. I was just wondering if there could be some more information, some more details on the centers of excellence regarding health and the other centers that are envisioned.
All right, thank you very much, ZIZ. With respect to the centers of excellence, last year when I took up the chairmanship and I presented at the central bank, I spoke to 5 categories of areas that I would, seek to tend to during my chairmanship. One of them, of course, was health. As is obvious, I'm a medical doctor for one, and I'm a minister of health. And I reintroduced the concept of centers of excellence for the reason, or for the main reason, to increase access of quality, affordable healthcare to the people of the sub-region, recognizing that none of us by ourselves can really provide for the health needs of all of us at a very high level. Our economies just do not allow us that comfort. Human capacity does not allow us that comfort either. And so if each country, for example, were to take on at least one center of excellence and share that with the rest of us, that would have, of course, have the effect where our people would have access to good quality healthcare in a region that is, close-knit, and therefore that can improve overall our health status here in the sub-region. So it's the idea of how can we share resources in health and other areas so that our people can have access to resources across the sub-region. Of course, the Director General will speak to other centers. So I introduced the concept, and you would have heard me speak about it on multiple occasions with respect to our renal situation here in St. Kitts and Nevis, where we are now equipped to carry out renal transplant. And that we are offering to the rest of the OECS, and in subsequent weeks, we will send exactly how that mechanism would work. But as far as St. Kitts and Nevis is concerned, that is already in place. The other one that I spoke to was a Center of Excellence for Sickle Cell Disease in collaboration with a major German university, the leading university in Europe on sickle cell disease, University of Hamburg. And they would collaborate with us to establish a center of excellence here in St. Kitts and Nevis. But I didn't do it just for St. Kitts and Nevis. I did it for the region, so we can have our people who are affected by this disease come from different parts of the OECS at least, and then we can see how we can extend it to the wider CARICOM so that they can have access to very cutting edge type of treatment. And so those are the 2 centers that St. Kitts would offer to the OECS. Of course, during the meeting, other countries spoke of what they might be able to offer. For example, St. Vincent in diabetic foot care. That is something that I'm very interested in. Antigua in advanced care for cancer. That is something that we are also interested in. And so as we build it out, we are hoping that, more centers can be developed and our people can have access to good quality healthcare across the region. I'll allow the DG to speak to other centers, as he would have mentioned, some of them as well outside of health.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the centers of health that you mentioned, there's also in Dominica a center for eye care, very high specialization, supported by an international foundation. The idea of centers of excellence, I believe, initially emerged around at the level of tertiary education in the OECS, suggesting that different community colleges would identify areas of specialization that they would want to focus on. I recall that very early on, the BVI, for example, wanted to establish itself as a center for marine and marine studies, given their long seagoing tradition. The idea has been floated around for some time, but we are now moving assiduously to ensure that member states are able to identify very specific areas for the same reasons, the same rationale, that rather than countries duplicate facilities with relatively small populations, we are able to aggregate demand in one particular location and address the need. Related to the idea of centers of excellence is an effort by the OECS Commission to encourage the formation of strong representative groupings. So, for example, we saw launch last night the OECS Robotics Association. Now, again, this is very close to the idea of centers of excellence because you have here a group of young persons led by Dr. Neil, who have had a passion for robotics, have done extraordinarily well as a national association, competing internationally. And so they formed a natural nucleus to attract other young people in the OECS to form an OECS association. I think there are now robotics associations in Anguilla and a couple of the other Leeward Islands. So they are moving quickly to do that. And what we do as a commission will be to help blow beneath their wings, to support the initiative, and to ensure that these young people, many doors are open for them internationally, not just to compete, but to deepen their studies, opportunities for scholarships in that area, where innovations, like last night when the Robotics Association was launched, I saw a fascinating piece of software developed by members of the association. It is a software that allows you on a mobile device to book, to see what the ferry schedules is across the OECS, and to actually book online, pay online for your ticket. At the back end of the thing, the ferries can see the passenger load. So it's a complete service application for the ease of transportation and even cashless means of payment for moving across by ferry. So I've actually taken note of that because as we have discussions on putting in place a ferry solution, we can ensure that this application developed by young people in St. Kitts and Nevis becomes the application of use across the industry. Now that's an important thing because what we're doing here is looking at opportunities to allow innovations, homegrown innovations, to be utilized to solve problems that we face in the OECS, rather than always importing solutions, buying expensive software. We can actually, this, who knows, may well become something that could be internationally valuable.
And just to bring it home to St. Kitts and Nevis, I support the Robotics Association very, very strongly. And one of the challenges that I gave them was to see how they could use technology to resolve our issues with the velvet green monkey that, you know, affects our agriculture in a significant way, negatively, of course. And they have taken on the challenge. The other thing they have done with our ferry service, they have brought a platform where you can make your booking online and go to the ferry service, get points and so forth, just like you do, for example, with American airline or any other airline, that they would launch within a week. We saw them with, of course, you know, drones that can fly and serve agricultural land in terms of spraying fertilizer and so forth. And they even had one that can go underwater where they can examine our reefs and so forth. And they have been doing that. These are the young people I think most of them are below 25 years of age, and they are using technology to help to transform St. Kitts and Nevis. And now they have extended it to the OECS so that, you know, it can have that regional impact and the sharing and developing of the technologies to benefit all of us.
Thank you
Good
for.
afternoon. This is Glenn Bart from SKN Newsline. Question, with regards to light manufacturing in the OECS. Now, we realize, of course, that the program based with the United States Caribbean Basin Initiative, there really isn't much left to go on in that regard. There's a lot of competition from places like China, India, and so forth. For the OECS countries, small island states, limited resources, limited population, and so forth, where do you see manufacturing, at least light manufacturing, going in the next 5 years or so that could be of any use, of some value to the development of the OECS? I'd like your viewpoints on that, please.
Well, let me say this was not a subject matter of this meeting. However, there are some thoughts on this. The issue of light manufacturing, as you pointed out, has been somewhat in the decline with the slowdown in this US initiative that supported light manufacturing in the OECS. I think the future of light manufacturing is going to be more digital than physical, because there are opportunities. We are moving more towards a service economy. And I think there are more opportunities in there, except if we are able to do something on the energy front that would provide us with cheap sources of energy. And that was something that was discussed at this meeting, where we looked at the efforts at geothermal energy and the need for the OECS member states who have that potential to combine their efforts so as to create a geothermal grid, which would then enable us to sell energy to neighboring islands as far as Puerto Rico and so on, the French territories. But importantly, if energy costs are cheap enough, then there are real opportunities for the development of industries that require high energy use. Now, again, because of our size and scale, we can't be thinking of huge manufacturing plants, but something like blockchain mining, for example, which is picking up rapidly now with some of the relaxation of the financial rules and so on in the US relating to the use of digital currencies and blockchain. It means, therefore, that geothermal can play a major role in that effort. So it's a question of us looking for the opportunities and aligning ourselves to these opportunities. But one thing, in terms of the social impact of geothermal, can be immense, because one, not just geothermal, but green energy, because solar, as the saying goes, the sun sends no bills. The possibility of the poorest people in the OECS having access to electrical energy in their homes could really do a major dent. In fact, move us from a condition of poverty to one of prosperity, put simply.
Right. As you know, St. Kitts was probably one of the leading countries in the OECS when it comes to light manufacturing. At the Paul Southwell Industrial Park, we had a number of factories there, as they're locally termed. We know that after COVID, about 2 of them would have left St. Kitts and Nevis to areas that they think are more profitable. However, in St. Kitts and Nevis, there are 2 factories that expanded because they started to enter the space of more advanced technology and creating parts for more advanced technology. And therefore, that has benefited us to some extent. We are still looking at ways in which we can continue to enhance the manufacturing sector here in St. Kitts and Nevis. That is why also thinking that if we are thinking that previously where we were with the United States, we have to look for new markets. And if you read the declaration, or the statement rather, with respect to Martinique, one of the issues that was mentioned there was the issue of marketing. Martinique and Guadeloupe together presents a population of roughly 400,000, and they have access to markets wider afield, which goes into the tens and tens of millions. And so that can also be a way in which we can open up new markets for our products here in the OECS as well. And so that is one of the reasons why we think further regional integration can redound to the benefits of all of us in the region, including our brothers and sisters from the French territories.
Good afternoon. My name is Lena Strick and I'm a journalist in Grenada. My questions, I have two questions to start. With regard to Martinique and Guadeloupe, they are already associated members of the OECS. Are they applying now to become full members of the OECS? And my second question is, mentioning of having this renal center in St. Kitts and another one, I think something for diabetic in Dominica. Is the intention to have these services in the different islands, so if someone needed it, then travel to the different islands seeking specialized healthcare? Or is it a case to have branches of these entities in the different islands, but headquarters in another island? And but linked to all of that is the whole issue of air transportation. What were the discussion at this meeting regarding air transportation for the OECS and moving around?
All right, I think you can take up the one.
Yeah. With respect to Martinique, that's an intriguing question you raise. Let's just say that Martinique's ambition is to be as integrally involved in the work of the OECS and regional integration as possible. I think President Lechimi's statement was clear enough that Martinique is not looking to do anything more than deepen its relationship within the OECS and the Caribbean, engage more closely, continue to be an active part of the French Republic, and open doors to the French Republic and to Europe through its membership in the OECS to the rest of us. So it's really Martinique really assuming its full potential as part of France, as also part of Europe, and also a very active Caribbean state, making decisions and being involved in the issues of Caribbean development. We are frankly also looking at what the legal implications and opportunities are for full membership. Some of you may know that Montserrat, for example, is a protocol member state of the OECS. So we are looking at that mechanism to see whether that would also allow other associate members, if they so wish, to become ultimately full members.
All right, with respect to the centers of excellence, it is envisaged that persons would move because to establish these centers, they would require a great deal of resources. And the idea is, of course, based on the fact that each country does not have the resources to support a center of excellence in all these areas of medicine. And so we'll expect people to move from one area to the next. So if St. Kitts has a center of excellence for kidney treatment, management, we call it renal treatment, then that would probably offer, let's say, renal transplant. However, let's say you're in Grenada, you would still have a renal department where you can do, of course, dialysis and other types of treatment. But to get that significantly advanced treatment, we are saying that if we set it up in St. Kitts and Nevis, then they can travel over, and then let's say another country does not have to bear the cost of carrying one of these centers, which I know is not financially viable for any of our countries. Based on our population, based on the fact that we can't truly pay for the full cost of these things, they would have to be heavily subsidized. And that in itself, these are deterrents from us having a center of excellence for each area in all these territories. So that is one. Now you spoke about regional air transport. While we may not have delved into it in this meeting, we have delved into it in other meetings, but it is linked to how would people move around. I can say right away that a country would have suggested how they can help with respect to moving people around. So that is on the table as well. Once we have these centers established, how do people move? For example, if I have a patient in St. Kitts who has a serious eye ailment, And we want to offer this service. We want to make sure that the poorer people, or those with least financial resources rather, would have access to this type of care. So if I have a patient in St. Kitts who have a severe eye condition, we have, of course, at JNF, eye center, eye clinic, as we call it here, but we may not be equipped to deal with these advanced type of diseases that require very scientifically advanced centers. If Dominica has one, why should we invest millions when we know it will not be financially stable? Dominica is how many minutes away? Maybe a half an hour away. If we can get somebody from St. Kitts to Dominica in a half an hour to get the treatment, they get the treatment, they come back to St. Kitts, we, of course, would be in a much better position. Why? That person can get treatment and St. Kitts does not have to carry all that financial burden, which it, of course, cannot carry at this moment. So in that sense, we are thinking, so already a country has put forward a mechanism of transportation. So that was also discussed as well.
Une petite précision. Oui, juste une précision, Monsieur le Président, je partage totalement votre point de vue.
Yes, just a precision. I want to say that I entirely share your perspective.
Et
Mr.
la
Chair.
santé est un très bon exemple de complémentarité à installer dans l'OECS.
Health is an excellent example of complementarity between OECS territories.
Nous allons livrer cette année un cyclotron 10e au monde et 3e dans les Amériques.
This year, we delivered a new cyclotron in Martinique, the 10th in the world and the 3rd in the American area.
La médecine nucléaire destinée à détecter les cancers.
We are talking about nuclear medicine aimed at detecting cancers.
Nous l'avons dit, c'est pas seulement la qualité et la performance de l'outil, c'est l'accessibilité à l'outil par tous.
And as mentioned, it is not just about the quality and performance of the instrument, it is about how accessible it is going to be to all.
Et concernant la Martinique, je l'ai clairement exprimé.
And as far as
j'ai,
Martinique is concerned, I've clearly asserted it.
Nous respectons le cadre de l'OECS. Il
We
y a des
respect
pays
the
indépendants
framework
qui sont
of
membres de plein
OECS.
droit. C'est logique.
There are full-fledged member states. It is
Nous
logical.
sommes membres associés
We are associate members,
et nous voulons l'exercer de la manière la plus performante possible.
and we want to be as efficient as possible as associate
Ce qu'il
members.
faut retenir, et là je m'adresse à la population de la Caraïbe,
What must be emphasized, and here I am really talking to the population of
en
the entire
ayant la
Caribbean.
Martinique au sein de l'OECS, c'est appartenir à une double union.
With Martinique within the OECS, you're in fact going to belong to a double union.
L'Union européenne avec 700 millions d'habitants
The European Union with 700 million people
et l'OECO.
and the OECS.
Et la Martinique a la particularité d'être à la fois en Europe et dans la Caraïbe.
Martinique has that specificity of belonging both to the Caribbean and to Europe.
Il faut saisir en termes de croissance cette position.
In terms of growth, there is an opportunity to be seized here within this position.
L'objectif, c'est de faire reconnaître la position géostratégique de la Caraïbe
The goal is to really recognize the geostrategic position of Martinique within the Caribbean area
au cœur de la mondialisation économique.
on the global stage of economic globalization.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Go
Yes,
ahead.
German Abel, Eskin Vibes. I have two questions. One has to do specifically with the banking sector. There are concerns about financial institutions exiting the Caribbean and more specifically the OECS region. Was this, and this has to do more with the AML CFT framework, is this an area that was discussed specifically at this meeting? One, and what are the recommendations coming out from that? So, secondly, the CBI and the establishment of a regional standard, was this also discussed, and was there any framework that was agreed to by those member states or by the council in terms of how these territories should go forward in light of the fact that CBI remains one of the biggest pillars of the economies from member states of the OECS region, and the fact that the IMF yesterday spoke about both topics in their assessment of the Eastern Caribbean currency union?
Thank you very much, Abel. You asked about the financial situation as far as institutions live in the OECS, that will be discussed at Monetary Council. And Monetary Council, as you know, is tomorrow. So that was not discussed at this particular meeting. The other matter with respect to the CBI, you know, St. Kitts and Nevis is a country that has CBI. This was discussed in deep caucus, and we looked at a number of parameters. Let me say that we are going to have a meeting within a week's time, a week or 2 weeks, to actually have the countries that have CBI programs or CIP programs to sit down and hammer out how we are going to do this. Of course, as you know, the central bank has been involved, and the OECS authority has also been involved. So yes, this has been discussed, and next week or week after, we're going to meet very soon to discuss how we're going to handle CBI as a region.
I have two questions from a colleague in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Will or has the OECS heads of government consider taking any action against the state of Israel for the ongoing human rights violations and international law violations in Gaza? That's one. And secondly, what is being done by the heads of government to push sports as a pillar to strengthen the socio-economic well-being of OECS citizens? I also have a question regarding Matniks. My colleague, his name is Robertson Henry. And I was wondering about regarding Matniks' membership status to the OECS. What are some of the trade, in terms of trade and so forth, what would Matnik contribute to the bloc and vice versa?
With respect to the sports question, we are actually going to be having a meeting or inaugurating a Council of Ministers of Sport in the next couple months. And in preparation for that, we are liaising with the sporting associations across the OECS so that they are aware of that initiative and that they themselves are in a state of preparedness. Because the approach we will be taking is to rely on the established sporting and recognized sporting associations to come to the meeting to dialogue with the ministers of sport, to put on the table their proposals of how we can improve sports in the region, not so much by asking governments for more money, but by proposing the conditions and the support required to enable sport to really flourish. Additionally, some of the member states have already made certain offers. So St. Lucia, for example, has a sports academy, which could be available for boosting sporting talent in the OECS. Guadeloupe has a high performance center for Olympic preparation. And again, as you know, there is the Express des Îles ferry that moves across most of the OECS. So it will be relatively cheap to get persons, Olympic teams preparing for the Olympics to go to Guadeloupe for a period of time to prepare themselves in that high performance center. We expect that with the formation of the Council of Ministers of Sport, there is going to be a lot of attention paid on a more systematic approach to sports, a more participatory role for the sporting associations in defining sporting policy across the OECS, and a more determined effort on our part to secure scholarships and opportunities for sport internationally for our sporting talent.
Thank you, DG. And the issue with respect to the war, I think that each country, and these are sovereign countries, as the independent ones at least, they have stated their positions. The OECS did not look at this as a grouping, but I think if you were to follow the foreign policy of each country, I can almost be certain that each country within the OECS would have put its position forward. And so that would have to be looked at individually as well. And some of our members, they don't have foreign policy directive, in the sense that, for example, their foreign policy is determined by you know, the country to which they are part, in the sense of talking about Great Britain and the colonies, and, you know, Martinique and France and so forth. So it is a divergence with respect to foreign policy position, and that would, you know, depend on each country. So I'll refer you to the foreign policy of each country. With respect to the issue of Martinique, I would ask President Lecheme to speak to that.
Oui, merci pour cette question.
Yes,
Et
thank you for this
en
question.
matière d'échange commercial et
When it comes to
économique de
trade
manière générale,
and
la
economic
Martinique et la
interactions in
Guadeloupe, je
general,
peux m'exprimer aussi pour la Guadeloupe aussi,
Martinique and
peuvent
Guadeloupe
apporter énormément à l'OCS.
can bring so much to the OECS.
Vas-y. Et on peut, ces deux pays peuvent apporter
Both
énormément.
countries can bring a lot
Premièrement, un marché de 800 000 personnes
with 800,000 people
pour
in our population
des produits qui pourraient être commercialisés dans nos deux pays.
and products that could be commercialized or marketed in both our territories.
Mais en ce qui concerne la Martinique, parce que c'était la question la plus précise,
As far as Martinique is concerned, to
Je
answer
pense
your
que-
question,
la Martinique peut apporter une force très importante en dynamique d'agro-industrie,
I believe that Martinique can really bring its powerhouse in terms of industrial structures,
la transformation
agro-transformation processing,
dans beaucoup de domaines, exemple le yaourt. Yaourt. Yaourt.
j'entends pas.
Pourquoi dire? Le yaourt,
Oh, okay. For instance, yogurts, sorry,
l'eau, les équipements industriels,
industrial equipment and infrastructures,
en matière de pharmacopée, de médecine traditionnelle,
traditional and natural pharmacopy, medicine,
dans le domaine de la performance digitale et numérique,
digital performance,
et toutes les industries qui sont liées à l'agroécologie.
and all industries related to agroecological sectors.
Mais ce qui est le plus important de mon point de vue,
What's most important from our perspective
c'est ce que Didacus a appelé un portail vers l'Europe,
is what Dr. Didacus Jules called a gateway into Europe,
un lieu de production aux normes européennes,
a way or a place where you can produce in compliance with European standards
adapté au contexte géographique et culturel local.
while adjusting your products to the local geographic
Et
context.
sur le plan de la santé,
And as far as health is
la
concerned,
Martinique et la Guadeloupe peuvent être des poumons de réponse
Martinique and
complémentaires par
Guadeloupe
rapport
can
à
bring
pays de
complementary
l'OECS.
responses to those provided by OECS member states.
Et en matière d'énergie,
When it comes to energy,
comme nous sommes des pays non interconnectés,
since we are not interconnected as territories,
nous pouvons établir des liens de connectivité, notamment sur la géothermie.
we can also extend new connectedness, especially
sommes
in
en
terms of
négociation.
geothermal energy.
Avec la Dominique.
We are currently in negotiations with Dominica,
Et nous pourrions aussi mener des travaux de recherche-développement sur toute la dynamique maritime
and we could also conduct a number of research and
et de
development
biodiversité.
projects when it comes to maritime sectors, biodiversity.
Aujourd'hui, ça se fait, mais de manière spontanée, traditionnelle et non organisée.
Nowadays, we are doing it, but informally, not in a structured way.
Il s'agit de donner une structuration du développement économique
Our goal is
encadrée
to
et
structure
structurée
economic
et
development
dynamisée par les États.
and to have it boosted by the initiatives and actions of member states.
Thank you very much, President. Any more questions?
Yes, again, Glenn Bart from SK Newsline. Having gone through the past 2 days.
Somebody mic open nowadays? Why?
Hello?
Yes, I think that there are persons in your office who might be speaking. We are hearing them clearly.
There is no one else here but me.
Okay, oh, somebody else somewhere is probably a cross line. Go ahead, Mr. Bat. We can hear you clearly.
Okay. My question really is this. Having gone through the last 2 days in meetings and in the context of the remainder of 2024, what would be the critical areas that the OECS Commission will need to address, along with, of course, the input of the various ministers, heads of government, in regards to the work program for the OECS?
Well, we have started doing our planning by triennium, so we are about to prepare for a new triennium. We have had 5 strategic priorities established, the first of which and the most important of which is deepening regional integration. So all of our efforts are channeled along those lines of the strategic priorities, and importantly, looking at opportunities in which we can ensure that each area supports the other. So there are initiatives being undertaken in health that have implications for other sectors, and so that cross-fertilization is necessary. There are critical areas that have been raised already that need to be resolved, like the issues of air transportation, air, sea, and sea connectivity, the question of internet access, which is a backbone for a lot of digital opportunities and jobs, the issue of youth engagement. And on the youth front, for example, there are many initiatives that we have being worked on right now. We're about to launch our youth strategy in full. There is many of the member states have youth employment agencies or youth entrepreneurial initiatives. We have been working, if you follow our website, you'll see we have had opportunities with places like Draper University, which opens up a full curriculum of training and support for young entrepreneurs. We have programs with other development partners that will need to be expanded along the lines of job creation and entrepreneurial opportunity for small, micro, small, and medium-sized businesses. So there's a full program of initiatives that have to be completed in terms of their execution, and a follow-up on new areas being open as a result of earlier successes.
All right, thank you very, very much. I think that's it.
No, again, afternoon. This is Linda from Grenada. I have one question that I need to ask. My question for this meeting, were there any discussion on cybersecurity of regional OECS governments and the private sector? I have heard that in recent time there has been cyber attacks on government's website, private sector website within the region. What sort of discussion took place with regard to cyber attacks and internet security for the OECS?
There was no discussion at this particular meeting about it. However, there is a project supported by the World Bank on digitization in the OECS, and several of the member states are part of that. We are aware of the recent cyber attacks happening, particularly with regional organizations, and as we speak, efforts are being made to tighten up on our security. Agencies like the Caribbean, the CTU will play an active role in these efforts. We are aware, for example, that Martinique and Guadeloupe, the territorial council were hit last year by cyber attacks that completely put their apparatus out of operation. So it's something that is a matter of priority, and efforts are being made, particularly through the World Bank project, to tighten up on our cybersecurity and put new safeguards in place.
All right, thank you, DG. All right, if no more questions, I would like to take this opportunity once again to thank all the participating members of the OECS Authority for their presence here and the contribution towards what I would call or term a very successful meeting. I want to thank the president of Martinique, who is here at the head table, who has presented his situation and has contributed. His participation today is a signal to his deeper connection and integration into the region. I think he spoke beyond the Martinique's statement that was made. he spoke to many other issues that are important to the OECS. I would also like to thank the DG and his staff at the authority, all those who have been involved in this meeting, in making it a success. And I would like to say thanks to all from our end, our own Commissioner, Ambassador, His Excellency Larry Vaughan, Pierce Hazel from the St. Kitts end, and all those who the security members, members of the security apparatus that help to secure our members here, those who are the liaison officers, protocol, press, whatever role you play. And also to say thanks to Marriott, of course, for hosting us. They have hosted us excellently, and we want to thank them for that. And with that, I say thanks to all once again, and see you at the next meeting, which is scheduled for June 18th. Yes, in St. Lucia. Sorry. So June 18th, St. Lucia, the next meeting to be held. Thank you very, very much.